Judge, thank you very much. And to our invited guests, we're trying to give you a flavor of our local city, our housing, our judicial branch, and now we're going to move to our county branch of government. And it's also another privilege I have of introducing Jim Rokakis. I got the privilege of sitting him for 2 weeks right there when I first started. I was coming in as council person, replacing State Senator Dale Miller, and he had new responsibilities as our county treasurer. Our county treasurer is a very, very important job. By statute, he has to collect our taxes and process them properly, and that's all he has to do. But Mr. Rokakis says, there's more that I can do. There's more that needs to be done, and I'm not afraid of doing these things. He is probably the lead voice on this foreclosure phenomenon, crisis, hurricane that we are experiencing right now. And it's a great joy to have a partner on the county level as our treasurer, Jim Rokakis. Let's give him a warm welcome.
It was 2 weeks, Marty, but remember, every year in city council is a dog year. It's 7 years, so it's actually closer to a year. Only Cleveland City Council understand that. First, I do want to thank City Council for holding these hearings on the topic that's all too familiar to us, the topic of foreclosures and abandoned properties. I'm a bit foreclosure weary these days, as is my staff, and I know as is Councilman Brancatelli and Westbrook and Reed and Judge Pianca. As this subprime crisis has deepened, the whole world has seemed to come to Cleveland in the course of the last year. The Brits, the Germans, the French, the Japanese, the Dutch, the Italians. We had the Greeks in last week. The Australians are here today. I've actually lost track. I don't mind telling the story. I don't mind telling it 100 times. I don't mind telling it 1,000 times. And the story, and I say to the benefit of the advisors here, is simply this. And I want to pick up on the point you made before I tell the story. I, too, was stunned last night that the question that I think is the most significant issue in Ohio, the issue of foreclosures, was not raised either by Tim Russert, who's from Buffalo, or Brian Williams, who came here to cover that very crisis about 3 months ago. And I kept waiting during that period of the hour and a half, and it never came up. So we have to keep telling the story. But the story for the advisors here today is simply this. Cleveland has suffered longest and hardest as a result of the practices that made an absolute and total mockery of sound banking principles, practices that made credit available to virtually every citizen of this community. And I need to point out the history, for the benefit of our advisors here. We actually complained as early as October of 2000 when a group of city councilmen approached me, and then we approached the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland about conditions we could not comprehend. Loans being made to people with little or no income, phony appraisals, suspect mortgage brokers peddling mortgages like they used to peddle newspapers on the corner of 9th and Euclid, and the practice of flipping that was alluded to here by Judge Pianca, a practice that clearly wasn't new to us, but was occurring at an unprecedented pace. So we asked the Fed, I believe it was Hoskins at that time, governor, with their unique ability and their authority and power that was granted to them under the Homeownership Equity Protection Act of 1994, to do something on behalf of the citizens of Cleveland. And they did something. They sponsored a very nice conference in March of 2001 on the topic of predatory lending in Ohio and subprime lending, but they took no additional steps to bring the crisis under control despite our urgings, and that's when I finally began to figure out that the Federal Reserve Bank was not there for people, but it was there to protect banks. Despite our urgings, then the city councils of Dayton, Cleveland, Toledo, all passed anti-predatory lending laws really out of desperation in 2002. And you also know the history. They were preempted almost immediately by the Ohio legislature, which acted in record time. They never moved quickly, but boy, did they move quickly in the spring of 2002 to preempt the city councils of those three cities. After that act by the legislature, the message really was very clear. The message to the lending community was, there's no sheriff in this town, and this town was the state of Ohio. There's no sheriff in this town to regulate this industry, not at the federal level, and certainly not at the state level. Well, guess what happened in the Wild West when there was no sheriff in town? Out of town, bad guys robbed the banks. Well, in this 21st century scenario, there was a new twist. Out of town banks robbed the people with predictable consequences. Thousands of abandoned properties, which we alluded to today throughout the county, are a direct result of the practices of these institutions and the population loss of over 60,000 people over the past 6 years, as you know, is the sixth largest population loss in the country. And the only communities that have lost more people are 5 counties in Louisiana who were afflicted by Hurricane Katrina. I would also add that we have until March 31st, you've got another about 33 days to file an appeal on your property tax appeals. Last year, 74,000 people filed for a reduction in property taxes, 60,000 through an informal process at the through the county auditor, and another 14,000 at the Board of Revision, a more formalized process. We are absolutely flooded by property tax reductions. And I will tell you that when the reappraisal is done by the auditor in 2009, you should expect for the first time, I believe since the Depression, you're going to see a decline in property values in Cuyahoga County. And the impact, you alluded to it, Chris, is going to have long-standing ramifications. So now we're left with this $100 million demolition bill, and it's not just in the city. It's in the city of East Cleveland and other communities, and we simply don't have the money to maintain these structures. We don't have the money to tear them down. And that's why we're working on the formation of a Cuyahoga County land authority, a land bank, if you will, that will take some of these properties in, hopefully many of these properties, and rehabilitate them where we can, sell them where possible, but more likely, in the large majority of the cases, probably tear them down. I know Cleveland worked hard last year to put together almost $7 million, $7.5 million, and $9.6 million this year to accomplish the goal of demolition. And it's really, given the budget constraints, it's a phenomenal job that they've done, but clearly it's not enough. So the responsibility is going to fall to whatever resources we can put together, and that's why we're helping to create this new land authority, an authority that will have its own source of revenue. But I want to make this clear, and I had this discussion with Chris just a few minutes ago. As we move forward on the economic modeling, and we're working out the mechanics of what a public land authority will look like in the county, I want to convey this message to the policy advisors gathered here today. The cost of the demolition and the maintenance of what will be thousands of vacant properties in this county will far exceed the financial capacity of this new land bank. The efforts of this administration and City Council, working with those of us at the county, will make a significant difference in reducing the stockpile of houses awaiting demolition, but will not be able to do them, not without help from federal authorities, and certainly not to maintain them on an ongoing basis. If we're going to gain control of thousands of abandoned properties in this community and hold them responsibly for redevelopment for the next generation of people who live in this community, we are going to need the help of the federal government. The next president should look favorably upon self-help efforts like the one developing here to gain control of these properties and help to cull the supply of housing that will never be rehabilitated or reoccupied. Make no mistake about it. Through its inaction and its anti-regulation policies, the federal government is largely responsible for this mess, and now they're going to have to help us clean it up. Now, I'm very concerned. I know that one of the chairs is empty here, and I am very concerned when I hear one of the presidential candidates, the Republican nominee, talk about how he's anti-regulation. You know, a seismic shift occurred in the world of regulation beginning probably about 30 years ago. There's a group of people in this country put together academic think tanks, and they created a philosophical underpinning that allowed them to convey a couple of messages to the American public. One is that government is bad. That was a message that was conveyed through their various studies. I think they call it the Chicago School. But the other message was that regulation was bad and let the markets control. And if you want to know what the impact is of an unregulated market, come to Ohio and look at what the housing market has done to this community, but now it's done to the entire country and, by implication, really the entire world. So thank you very much. And again, I want to commend you for making this effort to talk to our presidential aspirant. Thank you.